Hello, optimizers. JJ here, the host of Optimizing Me, the podcast where we interview top experts in different areas of human optimization. And we want to learn about their story, their mindset, their skill sets, and also getting practical advice on how to apply this to our own lives to, guess what? Optimize ourselves. In today's episode, I have someone that I'm honored to have here. The profound impact of her work, specifically in the areas of holotropic breathwork, psychedelics, and similar areas, is undeniable. And I'm so glad that she was able to have time to join us today. She has spent over 2 decades guiding people through deep healing journeys, working closely with pioneers like Stanislav Grof. Her approach is rooted in deep understanding of the body's wisdom and the psyche's healing orientation. From the moment, even before I met her in person, I was, first of all, inspired by her work, and also it informed a lot of what I'm doing currently, and I know that it will inform more in the future. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Stacia Butterfield. Hi, Stacia. How are we doing?
Hi, JJ. Thanks for having me. It's good to see
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure. So let's dive into this. Main questions. Who's Stacia and what is holotropic breathwork? I know.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
go
let's
with that.
just dive right in.
Yeah.
Two very big questions. I'm not sure we have time, but what is holotropic breathwork? Get asked that a lot. It's hard to just do a soundbite on it, but it really is a language, a method, and a structure for turning inward and working with the material that emerges from your own intrinsic intelligence. It draws on the time-honored traditions of accelerated breathing, the therapeutic potential of sound, music,
Mhm.
and somatic awareness and release work, expressive arts, and time and community as well.
There are many elements there from you mentioned breathing, you mentioned music, you mentioned a community. Holy moly. So how does holotropic breathwork came to combine all of those elements? Can you let us know a little bit of that?
Yeah, well, the originator of the work is Stanislav Grof, who is a pioneering LSD and psychedelic researcher from the 50s and 60s. And during the culture wars, the funding was dried up for psychedelic research. He did work at, he's a Czech psychiatrist, still alive in his mid 90s. Um, a Czech psychiatrist. He came to the US in 67. He worked at Johns Hopkins and Maryland Psychiatric Research Institute. The funding dried up, and he then was a scholar in residence at Esalen. And people still, he had enough of his research and paper out there and enough experiences that went so far beyond his traditional medical training as a doctor and psychiatrist that academia was not as compelling, I think, as his quest for further consciousness research. And so he drawed on these time-honored traditions. You know, there's all this talk about psychedelics, but long before that was breath and music. Every culture has music or a strategy for turning inward. These are very old, time-honored, time-tested ways of inducing non-ordinary states of consciousness. So yeah, I hope I got to your question there. I'm not sure I did.
Yeah, you did. Thank you, because this brings to my awareness also the notion of consciousness or altered states of consciousness. Now, for many people nowadays, for example, breath work, first, or it doesn't resonate, or it sounds like pranayama, which is more relaxing state, which is also a good state of being. I'm not criticizing it, but what's the depth or what is the power into altered states of consciousness?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even think of myself as a breath worker or the thought of having to breathe, it's not natural to me. But this work is uniquely different than your yoga studio variety of breath work, which, not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I think people can go and do a 10, 15, 20, 30, 40-minute breathwork session and feel invigorated, and maybe even get in contact with some emotional material, or just feel kind of the rush after a good workout. So not to say there isn't anything wrong with that. There's a lot of physiological benefit. But this really is set up in the lineage and tradition of accessing and expanded states of consciousness, particularly with the interest in learning more about oneself or the world that they live in, or the world that we live in, and things of that nature. So accessing deeper insights or different points of view, metabolizing some old imprints that might still be stored in the body that are no longer necessary or serving our ecosystem. And so ways to sort of metabolize and digest old imprints is another way of working. So it is uniquely different. The sessions are much longer. There's, as with any good non-ordinary state work, there's always a preparation. I'm a big believer in good preparation beforehand, the session itself, and integration afterwards. So these experiences and these states, I do not take lightly or for granted. They're you really want to have skillful support when engaging in something like this.
Thanks for clarifying that. In my own research and also my own investigation of breathwork, many people are nowadays using the term holotropic, but it's like a 30-minute, a 1 hour session. And I said, what? What is that, right? And so I would like to have your insight because on this and on what is it that makes different a holotropic breathwork session from a non-holotropic. We talked a little bit about expanded states of awareness. We talked about the psyche or self-exploration. What other elements make it different so that people can get to know when they're really into getting into a holotropic breathwork, and also the sacredness that is around it?
Yeah. Well, first, let me back up a little bit and say holotropic might be a new word for people. It was a term that was coined by Stan when he was doing his research and was seeing these extraordinary experiences that he really had not been prepared for in medical school. They sort of went way far beyond that in the depth of healing that he saw. So he could not believe that there wasn't a name for this subcategory of non-ordinary states that had this heuristic value, that helped us learn about ourselves, that helped us heal, that was transformative. And so he just couldn't believe there wasn't even a name for it. So he came up with the term holotropic, which is from holos, wholeness, and trepain, moving towards. So it literally means moving towards wholeness. What I think is interesting about the name, so that it really captures this dynamic quality that we are at all times, that we have this healing orientation in our psyche, and that we are actually, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, orienting towards wholeness, orienting towards experiences that can bring greater awareness and greater consciousness of our own systems on board. So also, I think what is interesting is that we're not quite whole, that there is something else that these states offer us beyond just the ordinary experience. I mean, and that's in those states where we can gather that really special information, a deep knowing or identification with the divine, or with nature, or with ourself, or the people around us, our family members, our community. The kind of deep experiential knowingness that is accessible to us in these non-ordinary states is of such value. So they offer us this experiential potential that we don't always have access when we're in our everyday mind of driving down the road or answering emails or checking the ticking off the boxes, and that takes a very different mind state. So it is a different mind state to gather more information about self and others and the world we live in.
Is that related to what is called transpersonal psychology, or what is the difference?
Well, it's part of it. I mean, I think ultimately, and a big part of Stan's legacy, he's been at this for many decades, despite current news media of success with some of these psychedelics and drugs and whatnot, with hard to treat disorders. But what he's really argued for is that we have an extended cartography of the psyche so that we can really understand the kind of experiences that we have and that they aren't just pathologized. What happened in the Western scientific framework is that this sense of the divine or the supernatural world or archetypal world wasn't really even considered for many years, and that most of our problems were just from our early childhood. And really what Stan and many other researchers have seen is that there are roots to some of these disorders, or there are dimensions in our psyche that go much deeper than just everything that happened right after our birth is what's impacting us. So it can go to the perinatal and it can go to the transpersonal. And really what I think the impulse here is to acknowledge this deep yearning that people can have in their psyche for transcendence, for the one, which is known by many names, but a sense of something greater than oneself. And I'm not talking about a religious, religiosity is the term that I use, where, some sort of moral code has been concretized by a select few of people and you're sort of in or out. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about a much larger sense of spirituality and oneness. And that can be such an extraordinarily profound experience when one has that. In fact, all of the world's spiritual traditions were founded on this direct experience of the divine.
What resonates with me is I've been obviously in holotropic breathwork sessions with you and other people, and the accessibility, how accessible are these technologies for anyone? That is something that probably is not being highlighted as a society, or people they don't even know that how easy it is to get into those states within the proper environment, right? Is that something that you've seen, or what do you what?
Oh, absolutely. And I probably should have stated it earlier, but really a central underpinning of holotropic breathwork is what's known as the inner healer. That's sort of the term that Stan coined, inner healer. It's not a very fancy term. I think organizations like MAPS that started to do clinical research had to kind of fancy up the term, and they started calling it the inner healing intelligence. That sounded a little more scientific. But ultimately that there is this this impulse from within that is orienting us towards healing, that is has a sense of what kind of material is sufficiently charged, has a sufficient bioenergetic charge that it's ready to be made known. It's ready to surface. It's ready to be given expression. That happens very organically. And so that can be a very new and radical concept for some folks, because we do come from a culture of doers, of knowers, of accomplishers, of, people come to your events and we give away our power. We want answers from other people. And this is really quite a profound shift in centering people's own experience, both what they know consciously and unconsciously, and trusting in their own intrinsic intelligence. And that can be so exquisite and so profound and much more interesting than any kind of situation that I could create in my head about what I think other people need to do to heal or transform or have a big experience. So my job is a continual letting go of my expectations and encouraging the people that I work with to let go of their expectations and trust in their own inner healing intelligence to bring just the right experience for that moment. While I've also put a lot of effort into creating the conditions for people to feel really relaxed and able to let go of this ordinary reality and shift into a non-ordinary state of consciousness.
And talking about these conditions that you've created, which leads again to the notion of what is the format of holotropic. How how do we know that a person is, or what's the format of a holotropic breathwork session in this case, so that people can get to know
Yeah.
and not get confused?
Well, I will say holotropic breathwork is deceivingly simple. It seems like you're just laying down, turning on some music, breathing deeper, more fully for a period of time. But really, it does rely on the spontaneous mobilization of the deeper dimensions of the psyche. So that is a big invitation. And that's going back to what I said earlier, why I don't cut corners. I don't take these states for granted. So anyone that is a certified holotropic breathwork practitioner, first of all, you know that it takes a minimum of 2 years to go through that training program. That is what Stan and Christina Groff, the co-originators of the work, really asked. They felt that people needed a minimum of 2 years to integrate their own big experiences from non-ordinary states, but also they wanted others to see skillful practitioners working with other people that had big processes in a way that supported the inner healing intelligence, that weren't coming in from the intellect, or but that were really supporting this unfolding from within. And to see how, despite how odd, maybe even strange it could look initially, the kind of depth of resolution that eventually can come is quite extraordinary. So it's a minimum of 2 years. There are all kinds of modules of study around the practicalities of the work, around thematic content, mentorship, apprenticeships, a demonstration of skill set. So there's a lot of training. Generally, the structure is it opens with a circle. It almost always is done in a group, and I think that's the most compelling way to do holotropic breath work. There is no substance on board. I think it's an amazing thing to come together in pursuit of the inner journey, and for people to come together and go inside and do their own work, but with others. It is tremendously healing. So holotropic breath work is always done with partners. So people partner up at the workshop, and you have one session that is as the breather, and then we switch roles and you are a sitter for your partner. So there's always a breather sitter component. There will be the preparation first that I mentioned earlier, the breathing, the sitting, or vice versa, and then an integration circle afterwards. I will say people, so that makes for a very full day for a 1-day workshop. It's not an hour, it is like 8 hours, really. You need to eat and take breaks, and the preparation is thorough so that you can more fully open to whatever might come through, that you can step into your experience as your experience. Um, Surprisingly, people love the sitting experience too. It is a lot of people report that it can be as powerful, if not even more powerful, than their breathing experience, which is, um, I mean, not surprising to me, but is a little bit surprising. It is such an incredible privilege to bring your presence and attention to another without taking on the responsibility, allowing them to have the fullness of their experience. Sometimes it can be kind of tender with tears or big emotions, and sometimes it can be kind of boring. And so even just kind of sitting there for 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours with another person, it's a practice, and certainly one that I think we can all benefit from. And conversely, allowing ourselves to be sat for. That's often the edge of many people, is letting someone else sit for them, hand them a tissue or a sip of water, or to support them. That's where I find people have kind of takes a while, but really letting that in is important too.
Wow, in the edges of interaction between the sitter and the breather. Wow.
Yeah.
And I can attest, I remember when we were in Iceland and I was breathing, my sitter, he at the end of my breathing session, he mentioned that his leg, the injury that he had in his knee was gone. That
Wow.
was, yeah, that was,
Wow.
but the interesting thing is that we were together how many days, Stacia? Like 4 or 5 days, right?
Yeah. Four and a
He
half, five,
even
five.
forgot to take his medicine during that time because his knee was not hurting anymore.
Wow, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So now let's put a pin here. And I want to
Yeah.
go and ask, how did Stacia got into all of this world?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was living, working, and it could just go so far back. I don't even know where to start with that. But I guess for the sake of time, at some point I became a little dissatisfied with life, or maybe because I had a life that was pretty close to nature in my 20s, that maybe I got called deeper into something. But I decided to do a somatic practitioner program in my late 20s and in the 90s, and just to learn how to take care of myself, do something for my body. I had primarily been very academic and heady, and I just felt like this was an area that I didn't know much. So studying diet and nutrition and somatic practices, and breath work happened to be a class in that program, and I was not attracted to it at all. In fact, I thought, whoa, what is this? And I just kind of did whatever I had to do to get through the class a few times. And I guess maybe it was the third or fourth class, I had what honestly to this day is still one of the biggest transpersonal experiences I think I've ever had. And it really made an impression on me. And
May I ask what
I
was that?
well, yeah, no, I mean, I, it, it sort of loses its luster if I say the details
Makes
of it,
sense.
and it wouldn't
Yeah.
be meaningful to anybody. It was just so specific to me, but the way that it was so embodied, and it was so intimate and personal and specific. It wasn't something coming from my head or my intellect, or it was, I had never had an experience like that, but it got my attention. And um I felt tremendously grateful, and so I just kept showing up to that class. Then I actually, rather than just trying not to feel anything for the classes, I really kind of opened up and began to try to collaborate with the experience, and really went for it. And it was the modality of all the modalities that sort of fast tracked my way into myself and a deeper understanding of self. And so it just worked for me. And it was a slightly different version. But then I came across Groff's material and I joined the training right away. And once I learned about all his theory and context, so much more made sense. And it just worked for me more than anything. That's why I think I'm here mostly. I went through the training. I certified in 2005, and then I began working for the organization that trains people to become practitioners of the work, both coordinating their international training program, and then facilitating at them. And so I would, prior to the pandemic, would work at about 6 or 7 6-day residential retreats a year, working on the facilitation team and then teaching. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny, like you can think it's one thing, but if you kind of just soften your gaze, I'm sure other people might have this experience. Life just, there is a particular trajectory that our lives move in. And even when it doesn't seem like a big event, it's this little thing got you to the next thing, got to the next thing. And so it's kind of been a giant unfolding, really.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And in this giant unfolding, did you connect with Stan Groff himself during the training? Because I know that you trained with him directly. You're a direct student
Yeah,
of
yeah,
him.
yeah.
How did that happen, or what was your relationship during those days as a mentor, having him as a mentor?
Yeah, yeah, he was still teaching in the training, and so, as was Tap Sparks, and, so studying with him, and then when I worked with the organization, then I also worked with him, with his events outside of that training organization, different, workshops with MAPS in 2017 and 2022, I think, yeah, and, um events at CIAS and just around. So he used to live in the Bay Area, which is where I live. And yeah, particularly when Christina passed, then I would spend quite a bit of time with him just to make sure he was okay. I think quite a few people did, just to support him. They'd been together for a long time. And so, yeah, he has had, I mean, a huge impact on my life, his work. Um, it's changed my life really. And he's, a wonderful human being. And he's just kind of very down to earth, and yet also has this tremendous body of work and is able to articulate different threads from different fields and kind of keep the bass note between science and spirituality, which is compelling to me. And, you know, not have it be woo woo, but actually be doing deep work. And I do consider it a tremendous privilege to have worked like by his side for, on the floor with people by his side for a long time. And and to see what is possible. And yeah, and really to remember to kind of keep one's cosmic perspective and status. So yeah, it's been a big gift for sure.
And it sounds that it's also a humbling situation to be able to learn from him, and also all the experiences that you were able to create for other people.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, it's been the privilege of a lifetime for sure. It's a
mm,
pretty extraordinary way to connect with others.
mm. Now, let me ask into this. People that are listening to this, they may start getting curious about how to start with holotropic breathwork. What's a good entry point? What are also mistakes that you see in beginners during the sessions? What would you recommend there in those two scenarios?
Well, I mean, there are one-day events around, but I am sort of partial to a multi-day event. I think that it's a big ask to lay down and go inside. And we live such a busy life that sometimes that one day just, isn't enough. And I think to really take a deeper dive requires a couple days where you can kind of let go. You don't have to worry about getting in your car and back into whatever work mode, family mode, etc. So I'm partial to multi-day retreats. I will say that. What mistakes do people make? Is that what you're saying? Asking
Yeah,
about people
or
experiencing or people that,
expectations. No, the breathers, for example, they may have expectations. So let's say someone who has had psychedelic experiences. If they hear around holotropic states, there is an expectation around that. And so what are things or what are preconceptions that you see in people that are, instead of helping, like reducing the impact that the practice could have with them?
yeah, I mean, the idea is, I mean, obviously, if someone is sitting with a big life event or transition, that can tend to occupy a lot of their mind and energy if it's, I don't know, yeah, partnerships or job separation. And so they come in wanting to work on these things. And yeah, it's like letting go of all of that. And trusting whatever emerges. So sometimes people want this kind of an event or that kind of a thing, and it's really about trusting whatever is right there and opening as fully to what is right there, and staying with it, and continuing to open to what is, and trusting that, and then collaborating with that in a way that is organic and supports this natural unfolding process.
So sounds that trust is something that people sometimes they don't have, but at the same time, that is the key to actually dive into whatever comes.
Yeah, I mean, they want to work on this big issue,
Yeah,
or they want someone else to tell them what's wrong with them, or
yeah.
what something means, or, what is this? What does it mean? And really, I think of this kind of work, it's an exploration. It's not about diving in and getting a big answer. I mean, sometimes that happens. There definitely are game changer experiences, but this is like a path or an exploration is what it can be. You learn how your own system works, what kind of language your own psyche speaks, how to attune to your senses and your body. Some people have gone their whole lives avoiding feeling their feelings. This is a place where you can kind of welcome the feelings, welcome the emotions. What is in there for you? You can actually feel them when you have skillful support and the presence of another. um, that can support you into stepping a little deeper into your own material sometimes. And I think people are quite surprised at where they're met.
Now, if this event, whether it's a multi-day or a one-day event, requires preparation, my guess is that it also requires integration. So what are some of the elements that a person that wants to dive into a holotropic breathwork workshop, regardless of the length, what are, you mentioned preparation is, or trust is part of the preparation, and there are other things that they need to prepare, and are there other things after care or during integration?
Okay, are you asking about integration or preparation and
Let's do both, right? Let's go with
Yeah,
prep,
yeah.
and then
Well,
let's go with integration.
preparation is really, it is kind of talking about, I mean, really, JJ, non-ordinary states and ritual and things were the strategy for psychological and psycho-emotional transformation. I mean, we're born biologically or anatomically, biologically, but really these ceremonies and these states were held in such high esteem because they were meant to mark a kind of psychological transformation or to help people through something difficult. So we've been doing this for a very long time. These states just got sort of legislated out of our culture, or were not valued or incorporated in our Western materialistic kind of frame of mind. So there are many other cultures where this is not new or different, but
And it sounds that it is basically a rite of passage. It's a
rite
rite.
of passage is one
Mm.
example. Yeah, every culture has a, all the biological transitions are marked with some kind of rite or ritual. And rite of passage is a big one. And I think we're missing the benefit of having meaningful rites of passage for our youth. I mean, that's a whole other podcast in and of itself, for sure. So I just, you know, back in the day, we would have to do more kind of education around that this is not that weird. Non-ordinary states is not that weird. It's actually our legacy, and it's part of us. It's what we've been doing for thousands of years. And so nowadays people are a little more attuned. There's more information out there, and they're having their own experiences. So that isn't such a big leap, but it is important, I think, to name those, to acknowledge that that is our lineage. We are part of that, and we are moving that practice forward. And so preparation can be about how non-ordinary states have informed our culture and civics. It can be about understanding these other dimensions in the psyche. It's just all things that really help relax the mind and body so that you can fully step into this experience. So I do think good preparation can impact the outcome of your session. So then you have your session, you're laying down, your eyes are closed, maybe a body scan, just to relax the body. And then the music comes up and you use the music, and the music is a critical component of it. And you breathe until you're surprised or until something happens. And then on the back end, there is an invitation to do a little expressive arts, drawing a mandala. That we have a share circle. Sometimes people, then we talk about another layer of integration beyond the share circle or the mandala drawing, the share circle, the checking in with others. As you go home, how can you take good care of yourself? I mean, if we lived in another era, we would be spending a lot of time around the experiential session, both preparing and honoring and celebrating the journey that we all came through. There would be special foods and eating, and kind of an acknowledgement of the deep dive, so to speak, and sort of the esteem for the kind of knowledge and wisdom that can come through in those states. But so we don't do it quite like that, but we do talk about how can you care for yourself, taking it easy. How can you keep alive some of the insights that you had? The good news is so many people have practices that are meaningful to them these days, like time in nature, or they journaling, or they do some kind of painting or a meditation. That's nothing new. So people have a lot of personal practices. And nowadays, I just invite people to share. Like, people are getting creative. For example, rather than taking a call while they're walking their dog, they are just slowing down and being present with their dog and going at their dog's pace, and just allowing that to be create some space in their day for them to be with themselves more. So lots of different ways to integrate. You could use story, myth, folk tales, movement, time in nature, all kinds of different practices. Ways to keep it alive, and ways to weave your experience into your life. It's about what the difference that it can make in your everyday life.
Thanks for clarifying that. I love that how you mentioned that there are circles of or depth of integration. I thought about that. Thank you very much. And now, talking about Stacia, we're talking about Stan Groff as one of your mentors. Are there other mentors that you would pick, or at any time of your personal development, that inform the work that you're doing? Because now you're in this lineage, and so you are growing even the work of holotropic breathwork with your own insights, with your own expertise? Are there other mentors around this new lineage?
Well, Michael and Annie Mithofer from MAPS, they've are dear friends, and I think professional role models and just really good people that hold the work with integrity and have worked tirelessly to help others and have been pretty impeccable in terms of their integrity. So I really enjoy them. And my other big mentor is Dr. Clarissa Pincola Estes Reyes. She's the woman who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. And she is in her 70s now and is a fierce, she's a former Jungian therapist, but also an activist, educator, a gatherer of others, and really a soulful person. She's smart, she's soulful, she's inspirational. She is, someone that I respect tremendously and have the good fortune of working with. And so I use some of her teachings in my work with others as well.
Thanks very much. I will take notes of this. I will put it all in the descriptions. Thanks for sharing. Now, in this work, you've been doing this for a long time. What is something that, and this is going to be a non-ordinary question,
Okay.
about what is something that you have unlearned thanks to this work? What's something you have unlearned that have improved maybe your own life and the quality of other people's lives?
Something I have unlearned.
Unlearned, yeah.
Oh yeah, this is all about unlearning. This is and that's actually why I love it, is that I do not know what is best for other people. And it is a place where people who are new in the work or less experienced, they think they know what people need. That's the only time that I've ever gotten troubles thinking, oh, this might need, but no, I have a deep trust in each individual's unique healing orientation. Other people, they have their own pace, their own, their own timing, their own unfolding. And I have had to learn to trust that implicitly. And that just comes from practice and just continually showing up. So one of the other big learnings or unlearnings, let's see, what else have I had to unlearn? That is the biggest one, and it's a relief. I don't even need to know people's story. In fact, people get caught up in the story. Oh, this happened, that, and I actually don't even need the story, but I can to be really present with someone and to support them in whatever is emerging, and for them to be present with whatever is emerging as fully as possible. So I've let go of. That's probably the biggest thing.
Nice, thanks for that. That's fantastic. I never thought about it that you were going to tell me something that's as profound as yeah, all of this work is about unlearning. And you're right, the majority of people get caught up in the story, and how I say it is they want to try to fix the story with more story. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I'll say is you can read every single book about non-ordinary states or holotropic breath work, and it's not going to make you a better practitioner of the work. It has to drop from the head into the heart, and really to be with people in these states. I don't think that you transform or heal yourself from your intellect. It is just one small aspect of the vastness of who we really are. So to approach it intellectually, to approach others intellectually, is just from a very small aperture. Really,
Mhm.
you need to widen the aperture much beyond just the intellect. I don't think we think our way into healing or think our way into deep transformation.
Mhm. This morning I had this idea that resonates right what you said, which is drop the story, pick up the heart. So that's the big
That's
thing.
it. That's it. JJ, you got it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now let's go into the last few questions, and thanks for your time again, Stacia. This is fantastic. What is the future of holotropic breathwork, at least on your lineage? How do you see this body of work developing?
Oh, I think it's more relevant than ever. People are awakening to other ways of working, of that other people don't necessarily have the right answers for them, that they have a tremendous amount of resource and material that they can access to understand themselves more deeply and to empower themselves in a deep knowing. Yeah, I just see the implication of this work. I think people are hungry for meaningful transformation. And this isn't the kind of work where, oh, I'm guiding you through and making up some story, whatever. This is each individual is going deep within themselves. So it's not, we're not picking angel cards or we're not doing, it's not light work. I mean, it's people are really taking on their own knowing themselves with earnestness and intentionality, and that is extremely rewarding. And I think that's doing it in a group, the kind of bonds that can form in the group that go so deep quickly, very organically. That too is, I think, such a great benefit from this kind of work, where people find kind of a crew, a pack, to kind of fellow travelers. Like people get in touch with their own humanity and they realize, wow, other people are going through stuff too. And we're all in this together. And to have a deep sort of embodied experience of that can just really be helpful, can be a good boon and good information for the continuing journey.
Nice. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask, first of all, where can we find you and what are your upcoming projects that we should know about?
Yes. Well, you can find me at connect at staciabutterfield.com. Staciabutterfield.com. And I have, well, my big project is I have a senior in high school, so launching her to college. But also, yeah, I have several retreats at Esalen this fall. And also, I offer immersive retreats with Naropa, their psychedelic assisted training program. So I do work with a lot of clinicians who are studying to become psychedelic assisted therapists, should that day arrive, hopefully. So I have a number of immersive retreats with that program this fall. And there is another organization that is emerging, that is working on training clinicians and clinical organizations on working with non-ordinary states as well. And some of the new molecules that are being developed, and they need to run through studies. And so how can we get people who are very not accustomed to those kinds of medicines, get them up to speed so that they can offer skillful support to their study subjects.
Wow. Wow. This is a different episode. That's for another
Yeah,
episode. We will
yeah,
save it for that. And
yeah.
closing, first of all, thank you very much, Stacia. It has been a fantastic conversation, a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate that you took the time to explain what does holotropic breathwork mean, what are the different angles, what's the philosophy behind it, and part of how you got into this, which is so relevant. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask in closing, and this is usually the question that I ask to every person, which is if you could leave the audience with one question to expand their minds, what would that question be?
Whoa, one question to expand their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Ooh. I think I think what I would just impart to people is really what I've learned from Stan is about keeping your cosmic perspective, that being engaged with your life, staying curious and willing, and opening up to your greater potential. It's not really a question, but a reminder to I think that's ultimately what this work is about, is that it's restoring our status as more cosmic beings, or that our consciousness is much larger than we really acknowledge, what we get caught in our everyday kind of thing, but to really allow and give ourselves opportunity to explore more deeply.
Um, I like it. I will take it this as a question. Really appreciate it. Is there
Brevity
anything?
is not my art. One question, that's tough. Yeah, I'll have to,
No,
I'm
no
gonna think
worries.
on it,
No
because
worries.
having the right question is so important. So that was a little
Maybe for the next episode,
next episode.
we're gonna come back and you can tell me, JJ, do you remember the previous episode? Well, this is the question.
Keep going. I
Yeah.
think having asking questions is really important. Being asked the right question is also extremely important as well. It can unlock so much. So thanks for the opportunity, and I will come up with some more questions.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Stacia, one more time. And to everyone who's listening this episode, we had today the holotropic breathwork expert here, Stacia Butterfield. If you like this kind of interviews and if you would like to suggest other experts to be part of the show, just let me know in the comments below or send me a message, an email. And until we meet next time, keep learning, keep optimizing. See you soon, guys.